I destroyed my 30-year marriage in a single afternoon, though the wreckage had been building for months. Not by choice. God knows I would have fought for us until my last breath. But some betrayals leave no room for redemption. Margaret and I had built something I thought was unshakable. 3 decades of morning coffee shared over the kitchen island, her reading the news on her tablet while I worked through the crossword. We'd developed our own language of inside jokes. How we'd grown in unison whenever our joints creaked getting out of bed, calling it our morning symphony. We had 2 beautiful children who'd grown into successful adults. Emily, 28, recently married and glowing with newlywed happiness. Michael, 25, finishing his MBA at Northwestern. We were the couple our friends envied. "You two still look at each other like teenagers," our neighbor Janet had said at our last anniversary party. Margaret had squeezed my hand under the table, and I'd felt that familiar warmth, the certainty that we'd made it through the hard years intact. But something shifted 6 months ago when Emily moved to Riverside Heights after her wedding. It was only 3 hours away, close enough for regular visits, but far enough that Emily could build her own life. Margaret's visits to help Emily settle in made perfect sense at first. A mother's love, a mother's prerogative. She needs help. "With the curtains," Margaret explained that first time, packing her overnight bag with the efficiency of someone who'd raised a family. "You know, Emily, she inherited your complete lack of decorating sense." I laughed and kissed her goodbye, then spent the weekend reorganizing the garage. The second visit, 2 weeks later, was for finding the right contractor for the kitchen renovation. Then it became weekly. Every Friday afternoon, Margaret would pack that same navy overnight bag, kiss me goodbye, and return Sunday evening, with stories about paint samples and furniture shopping. But the shopping bags stopped appearing. Margaret would return empty-handed, offering vague explanations about ordering everything online for better deals. Her stories felt rehearsed, like she was reciting lines she'd practiced during the drive home. When I asked specific questions, what color did Emily choose for the backsplash? Did she keep the original hardwood? Margaret would wave her hand dismissively. "Oh, she's still deciding," she'd answer evasively. "You know how indecisive she can be." Except Emily wasn't indecisive. She was exactly like her mother, quick to make choices and stick with them. I told myself I was being paranoid. Retirement had left me with too much time to think. After 30 years of managing logistics for a manufacturing company, my brain couldn't stop analyzing patterns, finding discrepancies. This was just my mind creating problems where none existed. But then came the lingerie. This Friday afternoon, I watched Margaret pack from the doorway of our bedroom. She was humming, something she only did when she was nervous. Into the bag went her new La Perla set, the one she'd bought last month, just because I wanted something nice for myself. The black silk nightgown I'd given her for Valentine's Day. Her perfume, not the everyday bottle, but the expensive one she saved for special occasions. Planning a fashion show for Emily? I tried to keep my voice light. She startled, nearly, dropping her makeup bag. "What? Oh no," she stammered quickly. I grabbed whatever was clean." The La Perla still had tags on it. I could see them peeking out from the delicate fabric. When she kissed me goodbye this time, her lips barely brushed mine. Her eyes focused somewhere past my shoulder, toward the door, already gone before she'd left. The familiar scent of her, shampoo, vanilla, and honey, seemed foreign somehow, like it belonged to a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Drive safe," I said, the words automatic. "Always do," she replied distantly, already turning away, her heels clicking against our hardwood. Floors with purpose. I stood at the living room window watching her silver Lexus reverse down our driveway. She didn't wave like she usually did, didn't look back. The car disappeared around the corner, and I remained at the window, staring at the empty street. The house felt different without her now. Not peaceful, abandoned, like it knew something I was still refusing to acknowledge. I poured myself a bourbon, neat, and sat in my leather chair. The decision had been fermenting in my gut for weeks, pressing against my ribs like something alive. Tomorrow, I'd make my own surprise visit to Emily. Just a father checking on his daughter. Nothing suspicious about that. I told myself I was just being a good father, checking in on my daughter. But deep down, I knew I was hunting for proof of something I couldn't name. I left the house at dawn, the Saturday morning air crisp against my face as I loaded a box of Emily's favorite pastries into my BMW. The bakery had opened early just for me. The owner remembered Emily from when she was little, always pressing her nose against the display case to fog up the glass. The 3-hour drive stretched before me like a confession I wasn't ready to hear. I kept the radio off, letting the sound of tires on asphalt fill the silence. My mind cycled through explanations, each more desperate than the last. Maybe Margaret was planning a surprise for Emily. Maybe she was helping with something Emily didn't want me to know about. Female troubles, marital issues with Tom. By the time I reached Riverside Heights, I'd almost convinced myself this was all a misunderstanding. Emily's house sat on a tree-lined street that looked like a movie set. White picket fences, kids' bikes lying on manicured lawns, the American dream packaged and sold. Her front door was painted cheerful yellow, a color that seemed too bright for what was about to happen. "Dad?" Emily's face appeared in the doorway, her expression shifting from surprise to joy to confusion in rapid succession. "What are you doing here?" "Can't a father surprise his daughter?" I replied cheerfully, holding up the bakery box. "Brought your favorites, chocolate croissants and those apple turnovers you used to beg for." She hugged me tight, and for a moment, everything felt normal. We sat in her sunny kitchen, the one Margaret had supposedly been helping renovate, though I noticed it looked exactly as it had during the housewarming party a month ago. "Where's Mom?" Emily asked, pouring coffee into handmade mugs. "Did you two drive separately?" The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. "She's not here?" I asked carefully. "Here?" Emily's brow furrowed in confusion. "Why would she be here?" "She left yesterday afternoon," I explained slowly. "Said she was coming to help you with—" I couldn't finish. The look on Emily's face told me everything. "Dad?" she said, her voice careful like she was talking to someone standing on a ledge. "Mom hasn't visited since the housewarming. We've talked on the phone, but Dad, are you okay? You look pale." The pastry in my hand crumbled, flakes falling onto Emily's pristine tablecloth like ash. My legs felt disconnected from my body. Someone else's limbs attached to my torso. The coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. "A month," I repeated numbly. "She hasn't been here in a month." "Dad," Emily started. "Every weekend," I interrupted, my voice rising. "She's been leaving every Friday for 6 months. Said she was coming here, helping you settle in, the renovations, the curtains." Each word felt like glass in my throat. Emily's hand covered mine. It was cold, or maybe I was. "Maybe she's visiting friends nearby," she suggested hopefully. "Maybe she meant she was in the area and—" "No," I said firmly, the word coming out, harder than I intended. "No. She specifically said she was staying with you. Every time." We sat in silence, the weight of unspoken truth pressing down on us. Emily's eyes filled with tears she was fighting not to shed. My daughter, trying to be strong for me when her world was crumbling too. That evening, I couldn't eat the dinner Emily prepared. Tom, her husband, kept shooting me concerned glances, refilling my water glass like hydration could fix whatever was breaking inside me. I excused myself after pushing food around my plate for 20 minutes, claiming I needed air. The neighborhood was postcard perfect in the dying light. Families were settling in for the evening, porch lights flicking on, the sound of television laughter drifting through windows. I walked without direction, my feet carrying me through streets that all looked the same. Sycamore Lane, Oak Drive, Maple Court, suburban poetry. 3 blocks from Emily's house, I stopped breathing. Margaret's silver Lexus sat in a driveway like it belonged there. The small dent on the rear bumper from when she'd backed into our mailbox. Last Christmas. I'd teased her about it for weeks. Her University of Michigan alumni sticker on the rear window. The fuzzy dice Emily had bought her as a joke for her 50th birthday, still hanging from the rearview mirror. The house was modest, but meticulously maintained. Rose bushes lined the walkway, their blooms so perfect they looked artificial, warm. Light glowed through sheer curtains, and I could make out the shadow of movement inside. A pair of shadows, actually, passing by the window in casual intimacy. I memorized the address, 247 Sycamore Lane. Such an ordinary address for the end of everything. The walk back to Emily's house happened in a trance. My body moved while my mind stayed frozen in that driveway, staring at my wife's car parked at a stranger's house like it had every right to be there. Emily was waiting on her porch, worry etched into features that looked so much like her mother's it hurt to see. "Dad, where did you—" she began, then stopped, reading something in my expression. "Oh, God, you found something?" I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. That night, I lay in Emily's guest room, staring at ceiling fan blades that cut through the darkness in lazy circles. 30 years of marriage played on repeat. Our wedding day, Margaret in that cream dress that made her look like an angel. The birth of our children, her hand crushing mine through the contractions. Anniversary dinners, vacation photos, Sunday, mornings in bed. When had it become a lie? Or had it always been one and I was just too blind to see? I had two choices. Walk away and pretend I never saw that car, or knock on that door and let 30 years of marriage shatter like glass. By D. Morning, I knew which one I'd choose. Sunday morning arrived wrapped in gray clouds that promised rain but wouldn't deliver. The kind of day that made everything feel heavy, oppressive. I sat at Emily's kitchen table, staring at untouched scrambled eggs while she watched me with red-rimmed eyes. Neither of us had slept. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "We could just call her, ask her to come here." "No," I answered, my voice sounding foreign, like someone else was using my throat. "I need to see it. I need to know for certain." "Then I'm coming with you," she declared firmly. I started to protest, but the set of her jaw, pure Margaret in that moment, told me it was useless. Maybe she needed to see it too. Maybe we both needed the wound to be clean, not festering with doubt. We left at 9 o'clock sharp. I'd shaved, put on a clean polo shirt and khakis, as if dressing normally could make this normal. Emily wore jeans and a sweater. Her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger, vulnerable. We walked those 3 blocks in silence, our footsteps synchronized on the sidewalk. A father and daughter out for a morning stroll. Nothing more. The roses at 247 Sycamore Lane looked even more perfect in daylight. Red like blood, red like Valentine's Day, red like 30 years of anniversary roses I'd given Margaret. I knocked 3 times, firm, decisive. The knock of someone who had every right to be there. Footsteps approached, light, familiar. The door opened, and there she was. My wife, though the word felt wrong now. She wore a silk robe I'd never seen, emerald green that brought out her eyes. Her hair was mussed in that intimate way, the way it looked on Sunday mornings when we used to stay in bed past noon. For 3 seconds, she just stared, her mouth opening and closing like she was drowning in air. "Richard?" she whispered. Then louder, panicked. "Richard, what are you— Who is it, honey?" a male voice called from inside, casual and comfortable. "Come back to bed, it's Sunday. Honey, come back to bed." 4 words that detonated 30 years. Emily made a sound, part gasp, part shriek. "Mom, what the hell?" she shouted. I pushed past Margaret into the house. Not roughly, but she stumbled backward anyway, her hand flying to her throat. The house opened into a living room that looked like a furniture catalog. Leather couches, abstract art, a coffee table with fresh flowers. Our house had fresh flowers, too. Margaret bought them every Friday before she left. The man stood in the kitchen doorway, expensive pajamas, silver hair still thick and styled even at this hour. He held a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Grandpa," a detail so absurd I almost laughed. He was handsome in that way. Money makes men handsome. Tall, fit, probably played golf at the country club. "What's going—" he started, then saw me and stopped. Maybe something in my face warned him. Maybe it was the way I was walking toward him, steady and inevitable. The first punch connected with his jaw before he could set down the mug. It shattered on Italian marble, coffee spreading like a stain. He went down, but I followed, my fist finding his nose, his eye, his perfect teeth. Each impact sent shock waves up my arm, but the pain felt clean, honest, unlike everything else. "Richard." "Stop! Please! You're killing him!" Margaret screamed, pulling at my shoulders. "Dad!" Emily cried from the doorway, her hand over her mouth. The man, Dennis, I'd later learn, Dennis Grant, retired investment banker, member of 3 country clubs, curled on his imported floor, blood streaming from his nose onto tiles that probably cost more than my first car. His pajamas were torn, one slipper had flown off, and he was making sounds that weren't quite words. I straightened my shirt, noticing blood on my knuckles. His or mine. I couldn't tell. Margaret knelt beside him, cradling his head in her lap. And that image, my wife comforting her lover, burned itself into my memory like a brand. "We're done," I said simply. 2 words, 30 years. "Richard, please, let me explain," Margaret pleaded, looking up at me with mascara streaming down her face. "There's nothing to explain," I replied coldly. "You're in another man's house, in his robe, on a Sunday morning when you're supposed to be with our daughter." I turned to Emily. "Let's go." We walked out, leaving Margaret sobbing over her bleeding boyfriend. The rain had finally started, soft drops that felt like absolution. Emily didn't speak until we were halfway back to her house. "Did you know him?" she asked, her voice small and lost. "Never seen him before," I answered. "She called him Dennis," she continued, when she was checking if he was okay." Dennis. Now the stranger had a name. Dennis, who called my wife honey. Dennis, whose bed my wife had been in while I sat at home, believing in 30 years of marriage. "How long?" Emily asked. "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know," I admitted, the truth tasting bitter. "But I'm going to find out." Back at Emily's house, I washed the blood off my hands in her guest bathroom. My knuckles were split, but not badly. They'd heal. The face in the mirror looked older than it had yesterday, aged by revelation. Tom had made coffee, and the 3 of us sat in their living room while rain tapped against windows. Nobody knew what to say. What was the protocol for this? What chapter? In the marriage handbook covered finding your mother with another man 3 blocks from your home? "She used me," Emily said suddenly, her voice hard with realization. "She used visiting me as an excuse, 3 blocks away. She was 3 blocks away, and she used me as her alibi." The calculation of it, the premeditation, made it worse. Somehow. This wasn't a moment of weakness, a single mistake. This was architecture, planning, design. 6 months of lies built on our daughter's new address. My phone buzzed. "Margaret, please come back. We need to talk. I can explain everything." I deleted it without responding. Another. "I'm sorry. It's not what you think." Delete. "Richard, please." 30 years. Don't throw away 30 years. I turned off my phone. That afternoon, I drove home alone. Emily wanted me to stay, but I needed to go back to our house. My house now. I had things to do, plans to make. The 3-hour drive felt like 3 minutes, my mind already working through the logistics of extraction. Lawyer, bank accounts. Lock changes. The business of ending a marriage was just that. Business. I'd run logistics for 30 years. I knew how to dismantle something efficiently. I left that house with bruised knuckles and something else, a strange peace that comes from finally seeing clearly after months in the dark. Monday morning, 8 o'clock sharp, I sat in the law offices of Brennan and Associates. David Brennan came highly recommended by my brother, who'd used him for his own divorce 5 years earlier. "He's a shark," my brother had said. "But he's your shark." David looked the part. Silver-haired, sharp suit, eyes that missed nothing. His office was all dark wood and leather, designed to intimidate. But I wasn't here to be intimidated. I was here to end things cleanly. "Tell me everything," he instructed, fingers steepled. So I did. The 6 months of weekend trips, the lies about Emily, the house on Sycamore Lane, the blood on Italian marble. David took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally raising an eyebrow, but never interrupting. "You hit him," he stated. "Not a question." "I did," I confirmed. "He pressed charges?" he asked. "Not yet," I replied. David smiled, the expression sharp. "He won't," he predicted confidently. "Man sleeping with another man's wife, he's not going to want that public. Plus, you could countersue for alienation of affection. Maryland's one of the few states that still recognizes it." I pushed across the folder I'd assembled Sunday night. Bank statements showing systematic cash withdrawals every Friday, always $200 or $300, starting 6 months ago. Credit card statements with charges at restaurants in Riverside Heights on dates Margaret was supposedly with Emily. The receipt from La Rochelle, an intimate French restaurant, dated 3 weeks ago, $347 for dinner for two, paid with our joint. "Credit card! She bought lingerie with your shared account?" David asked, his eyebrow climbing higher. "La Perla, $800 last month," I confirmed. "That's bold. Or stupid. Maybe both," he observed, studying the statements. "This is good. Clean evidence of financial infidelity on top of the physical adultery. Maryland's an equitable distribution state, but adultery can affect alimony. She won't get a dime of spousal support. We discussed division of assets. The house paid off 10 years ago, retirement accounts, investment portfolio, 2 cars, 3 decades of accumulated life. I want the house," I stated. "She can have her car and half the investments. No alimony." "We can do better than that," he suggested. "The adultery, I don't want to destroy her," I interrupted. "I just want her gone." David studied me. "You sure?" he pressed. "Most men in your position want blood." "I got blood," I answered. "On Sunday morning. By Wednesday, I'd changed every lock in the house. Jorge from Hammond Hardware did it himself, no questions asked, though his eyes were sympathetic. Small towns, everyone knew everyone's business, but sometimes they pretended not to. I moved Margaret's belongings to the garage with methodical precision. Clothes sorted and boxed, jewelry in its cases, the perfume collection she'd accumulated over the years. Her books, romance novels I now saw with different eyes. Had she been living out fantasies? Looking for something I couldn't give her? Found the photo albums and stopped. Our wedding album, white leather with gold embossing, Emily's baby book, Michael's first day of school, family vacations to the Outer Banks, Disney World, Yellowstone, 30 years of Christmas mornings and birthday parties and anniversary dinners. I put them in a separate box marked for the kids. Thursday evening arrived gray and humid, the air thick enough to swim through. I was nursing a bourbon in my study when the doorbell rang. Then the pounding started. "Richard, open this door!" Margaret shouted desperately. "This is my house, too!" I walked to the door but didn't open it. "Not anymore!" I called through the wood. "You changed the locks?" she cried incredulously. "You can't do that! I live here!" "You live at 247 Sycamore Lane," I corrected. "With Dennis." Silence for a moment. Then she pleaded, "Please, just let me in. We need to talk." I opened the door but blocked the entrance with my body. She looked destroyed, makeup smeared, her usually perfect hair tangled, wearing the same clothes she'd had on Sunday morning. The emerald robe replaced with wrinkled designer jeans and a silk blouse with what looked like coffee stains. 5 minutes, she begged. "Give me 5 minutes." "No," I refused. "Richard, please," she continued desperately. "It was a mistake. Dennis means nothing." "Dennis means nothing?" I laughed, the sound sharp. "You've been f***ing Dennis every weekend. For 6 months, 3 blocks from our daughter's house, using her as your alibi." "That's not nothing, Margaret. That's premeditation." She was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. We have 30 years, she sobbed. Our children, our grandchildren someday. Please don't throw it away. I didn't throw anything away, I replied, pulling the manila envelope from behind my back and handing it to her. You did. Every Friday when you packed that bag, every lie you told, every night you spent in his bed while I sat here missing you. She stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Divorce papers, I explained. David Brennan is my attorney. Sign them or we go to trial. Your choice. But if we go to trial, everyone will know. Your friends, your book club, the country club. Everyone will know you were f***ing another man 3 blocks from Emily's house. The children, she started. Already know, I interrupted. Emily was with me Sunday. She saw you in that robe. She heard him call you honey. Michael knows too. I called him Sunday night. Neither of them wants to speak to you. That broke something. In her. She sagged against the doorframe, the envelope crumpling in her grip. Your things are in the garage, I informed her. Take what you want now. Send movers for the rest. Don't come back without calling first. Richard. She tried once. More. 30 years, Margaret, I said with finality. We had 30 years, and you decided they meant nothing when you chose to f*** another man 3 blocks from our daughter's home. Sign the papers. Get your things from the garage. Don't come back. I closed the door. Soft click, loud finality. She stood on that porch for another hour, knocking periodically. I sat in my chair, bourbon in hand, listening to her sob. Some sounds, once you hear them, change you forever. 6 months have passed since that gray Thursday. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks ago, uncontested in the end. Margaret signed the papers, took her car and 40% of the investments. I kept the house and my dignity. David Brennan called it one of the cleanest divorces he'd handled. Usually there's more fighting, he observed. She must have known she had no ground to stand on. The truth was worse than just an affair. Through the discovery process, Dennis Grant's identity was fully revealed. He wasn't some random man Margaret had met at a coffee shop or gym. He was her ex-fiancé from college, the man she'd dated for 3 years before we met. The one she'd told me about on our 4th date, laughing about how she'd left him because he couldn't commit and wanted to keep his options open. Apparently, Dennis had finally learned to commit to destroying my marriage. They'd reconnected. On Facebook 2 years ago. 2 years. While I was planning our 30th anniversary trip to Italy, she was messaging her ex-boyfriend. While I was taking care of her after her hysterectomy, she was texting him from her recovery bed. The physical affair started 6 months ago when Emily moved to Riverside Heights, but the emotional affair had been burning for 2 years. She'd chosen that house deliberately. When Emily announced she and Tom were moving to Riverside Heights, Margaret had convinced Dennis to rent a place there, 3 blocks from our daughter. She'd used Emily's address as her excuse, her alibi, her cover story. The premeditation of it still takes my breath away sometimes. Emily hasn't spoken to her mother since that Sunday. She found out through friends that Margaret had been seen at Emily's coffee shop, waiting in the parking lot, trying to accidentally run into her. Emily changed coffee shops. Then Margaret showed up at her gym. Emily changed her schedule. The restraining order was Emily's idea, not mine. Michael flew home from Northwestern the day after I filed. I showed him everything. The credit card statements, the withdrawal patterns, the photos I'd found on Margaret's iPad of her and Dennis at various restaurants around Riverside Heights. He looked at them once, said, "Jesus Christ, Mom," and hasn't mentioned her since. He graduates next month. Margaret won't be invited. Last I heard through the cruel efficiency of small-town gossip, Margaret and Dennis are still together. They made it official, moved in together at that house on Sycamore Lane, but the victory seems hollow. Her sister, Patricia, told my brother that Margaret calls her crying most nights. Their mother won't speak to her. The country club ladies have frozen her out. She has Dennis, but she's lost everything else. I'm rebuilding slowly. The house feels different now, lighter despite the echoes. I repainted the bedroom, bought new furniture for the living room, replaced my kitchen table. Small changes, That marked the transition from then to now. There's a woman at my hiking club, Sarah. She's a widow. Lost her husband to cancer 3 years ago. We've had coffee a few times, nothing serious. She makes me laugh, doesn't ask about my marriage, understands that some wounds need time. Maybe something will develop, maybe not. But for the first time in months, maybe doesn't feel like a closed. For some mornings, I still set out 2 coffee cups before catching myself. 3 decades of muscle memory doesn't disappear overnight. But the pain is fading, replaced by something that might be peace, or at least acceptance. Margaret gambled everything on a rekindled romance with a ghost from her past. She bet our 30 years against the thrill of deception, the excitement of sneaking around like teenagers. She thought she was clever, maintaining her perfect double life. She thought 3 blocks was far enough to be safe, but close enough to be convenient. She lost everything that mattered. Her children, who now see her as a stranger who wore their mother's face. Her future grandchildren, who will grow up knowing only that grandma isn't part of their lives. Her reputation, her friendships, her family, and for what? For Dennis Grant and his Italian marble floors, for dinners at French restaurants and weekends playing house, for the fantasy that she could have both lives, the security of our marriage, and the excitement of an affair. She thought she was clever, maintaining her perfect deception. But lies are just borrowed time, and eventually, everyone has to pay back what they owe. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.